So thanks for having me for this virtual conference. I'm Rebecca Johnson with Dartmouth and the Office of Evaluation Sciences, and I'm going to be talking to you today about an experiment in collaboration with HUD and the Department of Education on placing college navigators in public housing. So the intervention we're focusing on involved randomizing college navigators to serve youth living in different clusters of buildings within public housing authorities or PHAs. So in Project SOAR, HUD made funding available to 9 PHAs, and the funding was intended to help residents aged 15 to 20 who were living in the PHA with FAFSA completion and post-secondary enrollment. So the results I'm going to be talking about today are focused on these PHAs in green, so Chicago, Seattle, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. And those PHAs agreed to randomize access to the navigators to residents living in certain clusters of buildings called asset management projects or AMPs. And in results I'm not presenting, 5 PHAs made navigators available to all residents, and we used quasi-experimental methods to analyze the impact on the outcomes. So focused on the experimental methods and results, we're using data from HUD on resident demographics and treatment status. We're using data from the Department of Education on FAFSA completion, college enrollment, and Pell receipt. And our main estimate of interest is the intent to treat effect on residents living in the treatment AMPs or clusters of buildings. So we analyze things at the AMP level, and we have specifications that only control for blocking variables, and then a specification where we do more extensive covariate adjustment. And our main method of inference is randomization inference. So we permute the AMP's treatment status 1,000 times. We compare the distribution of permuted treatment coefficients to the actual treatment coefficient we observe with our real randomization. We also use more standard parametric methods. So moving to the results, we find that the navigators had no impact on FAFSA completion, and those are the results presented in this slide. There was also no impact on college enrollment or Pell receipt, and those results are available upon request. So these are the results from the randomization inference, and in yellow we see the observed treatment coefficient, which was that treatment AMPs had a roughly 4 percentage point lower rate of FAFSA completion than control AMPs. But the blue distribution and the fact that the line is in the middle of this curve shows that we're highly uncertain about that estimate and that there was no significant impact. So what can we learn from this experiment despite the null results? So one interesting outcome was that we see really different rates of compliance across PHAs. So we define compliance as a navigator meeting at least one time in person with an eligible resident. And we see variation from meeting rates of closer to 15 to 20% to rates of over 40%. And in results we discuss much more in the paper, we use computational text analysis methods, and we use free text notes that navigators kept on meetings with residents to analyze different sources of this variation. So for instance, we see Philadelphia, which had a higher rate of in-person meetings, seemed to use the in-person meetings to encompass door-to-door visits with students, while their PHAs, it seemed more traditional one-on-one meetings. We're happy to discuss additional questions or results over email, and thank you so much for listening and for your time.